Hi there, my name is Dr. Chris Atchison-Clare. I am the director of CILMAR, that's Purdue University's Center for Intercultural Learning, Mentorship, Assessment, and Research. And I made this video for you today so that we could sort of walk through from an instructor's perspective some of the slides in this PowerPoint presentation so that you can sort of get my take on how I might use this, some of the things that I might say, some tips based on any experiences that I've had. So this is not meant for you to show students, but really kind of as an instructor's manual for you and a little bit of a demo of the slides. So we're going to get started here. This particular presentation is a compilation of several different activities, all related to the Hofstede cultural dimensions. By the way, Gerrit Hofstede just passed away a couple of days ago, so I'm really glad to be recording this right now and sort of honoring his life's work in telling you more about these activities and hopefully getting you to put them into practice in your different contexts. So the first set of the first few slides in this PowerPoint presentation are about the human values continuum. This is one of the most versatile activities that we have in our toolbox. I absolutely love it. I've used it dozens and dozens of times in many different contexts. One of the things I love about the most is that you don't need to do any preparation whatsoever in terms of having any materials, so you can do it anywhere in the world in any kind of classroom, as long as people or space doesn't have to be inside even, it could be outside. And so it's extremely versatile for that reason. The other thing I like about it is that it's this framework that you can really apply lots and lots of different kinds of constructs to. So anything that you would put on a continuum that's sort of a dialectic, or maybe even a binary that you want to change into this concept of a spectrum or a continuum, instead of having people think in either or kind of ways. So I think the examples here use Hofstede's value constructs, things like individualism versus collectivism and everywhere in between. But like I said, it's very versatile, and you can use it for all kinds of different comparisons. So the way this works is you're just going to show people what the ends or where the ends of the continuum are, and then ask them to line up and place themselves somewhere on the spectrum. And the real value of this, first of all, it's nice to get them up and moving, right? So they get a little bit of kinesthetic and, kind of stretch and move and energize and that kind of thing. But then they also get this visual representation of where they are in relationship to other people. And then that becomes super important and valuable in the debriefing process, because you're going to ask them lots of questions, potentially get them to move back and forth on the continuum in response to different follow-up questions, have to explain and articulate why they placed themselves and wherever they did on the continuum. So that physicality of the activity, I think, is very important. So going back to the slide, this is just one example, and there are dozens and dozens of them, I think, provided in the activity description, but you could really make up pretty much anything you want to put on the ends of the spectrum. So basically, you're going to tell people, over here is this thing or idea or concept or construct, and over here is this opposing one. Now put yourself somewhere between them. Okay, if you feel very strongly towards one or the other, move in that direction, or if you're somewhere in the middle, place yourself somewhere on that spectrum. This particular set of principles or statements here, I believe in a healthy work-life balance versus I feel selfish leaving my responsibilities for more than a couple days at a time, right? Is great in a professional context, okay? There are others that may work better in, study abroad contexts, or for residence life, or something outside of, kind of a professional context. But this particular example, I think, works really well for working adults. Right. So once folks are lined up, that's when the real fun begins, because you can ask people to explain why they are where they are. And then you can get them to notice how diverse are the perspectives represented in the room. Are folks sort of clumped together in one place on the continuum or in other places? Are they kind of all spread out? Also, you can ask people, having heard other people articulate where they are, does anybody want to move? You can also ask them under what contexts or in what situations would they naturally want to move. So are there some situations in which they feel more strongly towards one side or the other? Because I think what ends up a lot of times, especially people who are really analytical and overthink things, they always gravitate towards the middle because they're thinking, well, it depends, right? And they don't really belong in the middle. What they really do is swing back and forth from one side or the other, right? So if you can get them to really talk about sometimes I'm over here and sometimes I'm over here, that doesn't actually translate to I'm in the middle. It means, right, depending on the context, I'm on one side or the other. So getting folks to talk through all of those intricacies, I think, is really important. I also love to ask the counterexample question. So you can ask people, are you similar to most people in your cultural group? The groups in which you claim cultural membership. So your country, your religious group, your family, any other groups to which you belong. Or are you sort of an outlier, right? And then you can ask them, if you are sort of in the norm, and this is sort of average for your cultural group, are there any circumstances or can you think of any people who are outliers, or where do those counterexamples pop up? Okay, so an example of this, just off the top of my head, I remember when I did this in China one time, and the students were talking about this weird collectivist thing that people in the U.S. did. And I thought, well, that's odd because, most people think of the U.S. as individualistic as opposed to China being more collectivistic, in terms of the spectrum. But the Chinese students were talking about how odd they found it that everybody all at one time in a fad will read the same book, or some other sort of piece of pop media culture. So they're sort of like collectivistic in their consumption of media. Another counterexample that comes to mind for China is that we, as visitors to China, when I took a study abroad group there, my students had this false conception that everything was always on the extreme end of the collectivistic side. And so when they ordered dinner together, they saw these round tables, they saw the lazy Susan in the middle that turned around, and it was just like a free-for-all. They put everything, so like rice bowls, noodle dishes, dumplings, glasses of drinks, things that people actually would not share at the dinner table in China, but they shared everything thinking that, oh, it's the extreme, over here in collectivism. So to me, the richness of discussion of these examples and the counterexamples is what gives you a really nuanced feel of the continuum and the back and forth, and what prevents us from stereotyping or being very simplistic and overgeneralizing our understandings of what these constructs are. So I encourage you, when you do brief this, to be as complex and as nuanced as possible, and really digging deep into the complexities and not just dealing with the simple concepts on the ends of the constructs. Here's another example that you can use. This one differentiates between guilt and shame, and this is a more individualistic versus a collectivistic. Do you feel guilty because something that you've done, or do you feel shamed sort of in the eyes of other people? Here's another one based on sort of more individual markings of success as opposed to relationships and those kinds of things. So that's the human values continuum. And I'm going to stop there in terms of the walkthrough of this PowerPoint, because we try to keep these demo videos to about 10 minutes. I just want to say very briefly that the rest of these slides give dialogues and then give examples of each of these constructs from Hofstede's dimensions, so that it's a really good way to interactively teach what the constructs are. If you don't want to lecture about Hofstede's work, these PowerPoint slides gives you a really good set of activities that that teach what the concepts are, so that you have kind of a round robin activity where you're getting people to understand better different pieces of the puzzle and then put them together with other pieces for in a group. There's also lots of examples, so you go through the constructs and then you see dialogue examples. So this is a very interactive way to deal with content that can be very heavy if you don't want to lecture, but you really want people to learn and apply these different value continuum, okay? All right, I'm gonna stop there. I do want to encourage everyone to contribute as much as possible to the Intercultural Learning Hub. In the case of something like this, if you're watching this video, please put a review on this activity, or if you adapt it in some way to a context, we would love to hear about your modifications, either in a review, or you can send us PowerPoint slides or other handouts to curate the activities that are already here. And of course, you're welcome to add anything that is original that you've created yourself. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.